Welcome everyone to Gamer Melt. Today I've got a bunch of really interesting stories for you, so I thought I would do the video like this. Starting things off, Valve changed the specs of their Steam Deck, AMD was hacked for using the password password. Intel's A380 is just sad. 13,900K performance leaks, and Nvidia just released the dumbest GPU ever. Okay, I actually think and it's gone. Again. I mean, I was barely late this time. This is seriously... If you're like this guy, and you keep missing out on a sweet new GPU because you're just a couple minutes late, or you forgot about that awesome PC hardware sale before it was over, well, don't miss anything ever again by joining the GamerMail notification squad, where I'll send you a notification when major PC hardware gets released, as well as some great deals. And the best part is that it's free. Plus, while I do send it via email, don't worry, you won't ever get a bunch of spam or anything like that. I'm mostly focusing on major hardware releases and deals like CPUs, GPUs, new chipsets, etc. Because let's be honest, it's tough to keep up with even important releases with all the noise out there, so let me do it for you. Simply visit the link in the description and sign up for the GamerMail notification squad. It's free, so you've got nothing to lose. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, like we saw a little while back with memory, it looks like Valve has randomly decided to change the specs of their Steam Deck. The story originally comes from Hardware Lux, and according to them, the change was actually made as early as May 28th, yet pretty much no one found it until now. Either way, when we look, we can see this right here was the original specs, and it showed with the memory PCI Express Gen 3 x 4 for both the 256GB and 512GB models. When we look now, it actually shows PCI Express Gen 3 x 2, which is half the potential bandwidth depending on the memory. And when we look down here, it says some 256GB and 512GB models will ship with PCI Express Gen 3 x 2. It says, in our testing, we did not see any impact to gaming performance between x2 and x4. And of course, that is important, but they also specifically say gaming performance. This, of course, would have an impact on loading the games. Now, hopefully that is what they're referring to, but regardless, they just up and decided to do this out of nowhere without telling anyone. So yeah, I really think that's kind of like the main issue that most people are having with this. They flat didn't tell anyone. So when you purchase your model, there's a chance that you got something that technically isn't as good as you expected. Hopefully, as they stated, it doesn't actually affect performance in any way, but of course, time, as always, will tell. And next up for today, AMD is investigating an alleged hack from a fairly new ransom group called Ransom House. As you can see here, they claim to have taken more than 450 gigabits of data from AMD. Now, I'm not exactly sure if the little b was a typo and they meant gigabytes, but this being gigabits, that means around, I believe it's like 58, 59 gigabytes, somewhere right around there. But obviously that would make a pretty big difference. Either way, according to this person right here, it says Restore Privacy says that it has reviewed data processed by Ransom House, and it appears to include network files, system information, as well as AMD passwords. And while on the topic of AMD passwords, when we go down here, you can see that the group claims that AMD used simple passwords like password, all lowercase, to protect its networks, leading to the breach. Meaning AMD, a tech company that should absolutely 100% know better, may have actually used passwords like password and probably stuff like 1234556 for the passwords for their own networks. And next up for today, while Intel's A380 has officially been launched for a little while now, and I actually went over some early benchmarks from reviewers, but some commenters seem to think that we should wait for more reviews before kind of determining just how good it is or isn't, etc. Well, it looks like we do have yet another review, this time with 17 different games against the GTX 1650 and AMD's RX 6400. And when we look right here, we can see going through these that Intel's Arc loses here to both GPUs. It wins here, but don't get your hopes up. It loses in Battlefield 5, loses again in Warframe, loses again in Hitman 3, loses again in Total War. At least it loses against the GTX 1650, eases out the RX 6400. Keep on going. We see it's just losing again and again, and at least according to this, Intel's A380 is an average of 15% slower than the GTX 1650. As they mention here, it is a 3-year-old GPU. And obviously, while yes, this is one of their lowest end models, it is still pretty disappointing. I mean, 15% slower than a GTX 1650. Now, that could boil down to it just being issues with drivers still that they're having, and of course, they released it in China first for a reason, but at least to me, given this is officially released, yes, it's only in China, but it still is released, that is not a good enough excuse, especially given Intel has delayed these multiple times at this point, at least twice, but I would say it's even more than that because let's not forget that these were actually supposed to come all the way back in 2020. So yeah, I really don't care if that is the issue. That's not a good enough excuse. These are officially released, and 15% slower is definitely disappointing. Luckily, their poor performance seems to end with our next story, as a user was actually able to get and test a new engineering sample for Intel's upcoming 13900K. As you can see down here, this comes from the ChipL forum Lords, who claims that he was actually the one that listed the 13900K that we saw a little while back. This was an ES1 model, but the one he's talking about now is an ES3. And that means that while yes, it is still an engineering sample, it's much closer to the performance we can expect to the final release. As you can see down here, the ES3 sample actually got a single core score of 5.5 GHz and a boost of 5.3. Now, obviously we've seen Raptor Lake get at those clocks, but of course this is still an engineering sample, so the final release could be even better. Regardless, he actually shared performance, but before I get to that, I do want to make it clear that he shared actual screenshots of the ES1 sample, but he just told us about ES3, so there's a chance he's just making this up, but of course he clearly has access to other engineering samples, so he very well likely is not. Still, I wanted to let you know, but when it comes to performance, the user claimed that the ES3 variant got 880 points on CPU-Z in single core and 15,000 points in multi-core. For comparison, that actually puts it at 7% higher single-threaded performance when compared to the 12900K and 28% boost in multi-threaded performance. We can actually see down here a fairly decent representation of this. So here's a 13900K getting seriously impressive points, but way better than that, we see the multi-threaded performance. 18,000, significantly higher than both the 5950X, 13900K, 12900K, etc. Now, obviously we've seen from AMD that their next gen Ryzen 7000 is expected to get significantly better performance than the 5000 series. But of course, the main thing here, and the main reason why Intel's 12,000 CPUs are doing so well, is their price when compared to AMD's Ryzen. So if Intel ends up keeping their prices the same as well as AMD for next gen, Intel could have a serious win on their hands. And lastly for today, like I said in my last video, Nvidia officially launched their GTX 1630. And just like the leak suggested, you can see here 512 CUDA cores, 4 GB on a 64-bit memory bus. All of that looks to have been correct. 512 CUDA cores, a boost clock of 1785 MHz, base clock of 1740, 4 GB GDDR6 across a 64-bit bus. Now, obviously, this isn't a surprise, but one thing we didn't learn was performance until now. As you can see right here with Tech Power Up, who was actually able to test the Gainward GTX 1630 Ghost in quite a few benchmarks, found that it is a horrible GPU. As you can see right here, the Gainward, this is relative performance, so this should be all of their tests. You can see right here, it's a combined performance summary of all of their tests, and at 1080p, the RX 6400 beats the GTX 1630 by 57%, meaning Nvidia's GPU does horribly when compared to AMD's. And of course, the RX 6400 is an even worse version to the RX 6500 XT. And if you watch those reviews, you know that it's a pretty terrible GPU. Well, the GTX 1630 puts all of those to shame in the worst way possible, especially given the price. Now, as of right now, Nvidia hasn't released an official MSRP. We're hearing around $150, $160, but you can see, like for example, EVGA has the GPU for a whopping $200. Remember, this is a GPU significantly worse than the RX 6400. So yeah, I would definitely qualify this as one of, if not the dumbest GPU launches from Nvidia maybe ever. So while that does it for today, let me know what you think about Nvidia's GTX 1630. Is it as bad as it seems, or am I missing something? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe. And as always, have a great day.